Hello, everyone. I'm Keith DeStone from the Center for Hellenic Studies in Washington, D.C., and I'm here as usual with Greg Nagy and Sarah and Jenna and Elen for HeroesX office hours for v16 of HeroesX. And Greg, we're going to discuss the responses to the questions that you posed in the discussion forum for hours 14 and 15. The hour 14 question is as follows. After reading Philostratus on the Garden of Protesilaus, have your views changed about the Garden of Laertes in Odyssey 24? What are folks saying about this one?
Well, someone is asking, in Laertes' garden, is there a hero? Are not both father and son still mortal and living? The two narrations seem more different to me than alike, as if centuries apart in their representations of ancient Greek culture and the hero concept.
That's an arresting thought. I'll really have to think about it and think hard. I confess that I haven't noticed a big time gap in the evolution of this medium, this Homeric medium, when it comes to the way that garden is visualized in the Odyssey. But maybe I misunderstand what our dear participant is thinking about. Maybe they're thinking about the time gap between whenever the Odyssey takes its definitive shape as we have it, and this very complex exercise in a prose retelling of the world of heroes, which extends maybe even beyond the second century CE. I almost said BCE because my mind is always in BCE. What do you think, dear Elen? Do you think that I misunderstood the intent of our wonderful participant when they're talking about time gap?
Well, I don't know, but there is certainly a question about can Laertes and his son be heroes in the garden since they are still living?
Oh, that doesn't bother me. I shouldn't be so cavalier about oh, that doesn't bother me. It's because frankly, Homeric poetry behaves in such a stylized way about hero cults in general. I remember going to a colloquium in Greece where the organizers were collecting a whole bunch of varied opinions about Homeric poetry. And at this colloquium, I tried to address what I consider to be a reality, which is signs of hero cult in Homeric poetry. But frankly, most classicists aren't aware of it because it's so under the cover, as it were. There are hints, but there's nothing explicit about hero cult, except in a few cases like the reference to the #1 cult hero of the Athenians in Iliad 2. Well, there you have a fairly straightforward description of hero cult, but even that is almost an outlier. And let me try to put it another way, which is that we need authors like Protesilaus to start to appreciate hero cult, and it would be almost impossible to reconstruct hero cult if we had nothing but the Homeric Iliad and Odyssey. I just have to admit that.
I think you mean Philostratus, on the subject of protesilaus as hero.
Yes, I hate to think what I said.
Oh, you said protesilaus when you meant Philostratus, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, I did. It's like confusing the subject with the author.
Well, I think that's, in a way, the entire point. The medium is all about a double vision.
Yes.
Where we see, this is one of your examples, Achilles as a living person in Iliad 23 in the games, presiding over games. And in fact, he was the kind of ghostly patron, as I like to say, of games in real life in Athens. Even though he's alive in the medium, it points to something in the context of the author, so to speak.
Keith, you're so right that you could imagine Protesilaus, the voice of that hero, the first hero who died on the Achaean side in the Trojan War, as the quote unquote author of this whole exercise on heroes, because it's his experiences which are above and beyond the experiences that are so beautifully narrated in Homeric poetry, that is the object of this strange not late antique, but post-classical exercise in trying to understand heroes. So our participants are very sharp, and I have to be on my guard.
Another poster said, comparing to text, enhanced understanding. These two passages, comparing these two passages, enhance my understanding between unwilting plant and hero and hero cult. The recognition. This is also a recognition scene for father and son. And is it also a recognition scene between a hero and a mortal?
Oh, well, but they're all mortals. I'm being cavalier again. What's wrong with me? But this is what happens when we do a retrospective look on Homeric poetry, which is what we're doing. And I keep saying to myself, it's such a marvel to experience Homeric poetry, and here's a late era when hero cults are definitely on their way out. Christianity is definitely becoming the dominant mode of thinking about important mysteries like resurrection. That's why this piece by Philostratus, and this time I said it right, this piece by Philostratus kind of augments the prestige of Protesilaus by saying, oh, this hero had two resurrections. Jesus had only one. And considerations like that. So everything is so, how shall I say it, overstated, exaggerated, because the medium is on its way out. Could I draw an analogy, a distant analogy, but one I think that you will like, which is that there's a ballet company. There was a ballet company, Ballet Folklorico in Mexico, where the initial impetus was to have as much demonstration of the variety of Mexican folk dances as possible. But eventually, as the folk dancers became more and more popular in popular media and did their concert tours, eventually the whole routine, shall I say, lost its capacity for variation, and the fluidity eventually became something that was non-fluid. And I was thinking of a good aesthetic term to describe how something that used to be fluid, which is attractive to me, can become something that's rigid. And rigid doesn't sound attractive, does it? Because you think of rigor mortis. And so I came up with the term crystallization. Do you like that? But the thing about crystallization is something that is crystallized is brittle, and it can break very easily. And if there's any kind of abrupt confrontation, there can be total loss. And that's certainly what happened not too many years after the era of Philostratus's HeroesX. So it's a dying medium.
One of our participants, comparing the two passages, draws attention to the different types of longing. In Philostratus, there's a lot of eroticization of that longing, whereas we don't see that in the encounter between Odysseus and Laertes. And I was thinking back even with the other encounters that he has with his family, at any rate. Yeah. So is that part of that process, do you think, Greg, or is this just the different media that have that eroticization or not?
Well, I think in general, may I say that Homeric poetry, as we start looking back at it and trying to imagine how it was evolving forward in time, but now we're so much forward in time and looking backwards. I think we're appreciating more and more. And in my old age, I appreciate all the more how much sophisticated evolution there had been already in Homeric poetry. We look at it as, the first thing from Greek civilization, but there's so much build up to that. And I sometimes say to people, well, you're dealing with a medium that took at least 1,000, maybe 1,500 years to reach the state of crystallization. I'll say that now about Homeric poetry that we find in the text that we're reading, because that too is a brittle thing. So from that point of view, I just marvel at the subtlety, and I hope that our participants, by looking backwards and then trying to reconstruct forward again, can appreciate more and more just how much evolution had gone into this medium. Whether we date the crystallization to the late 8th and early 7th century BCE, which I used to think about less, but now I think about more and more, or whether we think of the later bottleneck, or that I've switched metaphors, the later phase of crystallization, which is in Athens in the late 6th and then 5th centuries, and in that era, things get very complicated about sex and love, don't they? And people used to think that was very archaizing. Oh, they didn't think about sex and love. Oh, yes, they did, but I think there's much more filtering. And my favorite example is the homoeroticism that can be reconstructed for Achilles and Patroclus. Am I saying that Achilles and Patroclus are gay? No, that is oversimplifying something that has a lot of prehistoric and historical complexities. But there's certainly that element in the narrative tradition, and in the Homer that we have. Can I put it that way? It's quite attenuated. You certainly don't have Achilles and Patroclus sleeping together. They sleep with war prize women in the same resting place, but there you are. And the examples can be multiplied.
Well, let's move to hour 15. The question there is, do you think that Pausanius was emotionally transformed by the experience of being initiated into the hero cult of Trophonius? Whether you answer yes or no, either way, how would you describe his response to his experience?
That one is a giveaway, isn't it? I hope.
Yes. Well, one participant writes that is wondering, everyone that passed through this initiation would never be the same again. Is it like a baptismal? And his whole identity changes? Is it like an iconic death?
Well, if I heard correctly, baptism, as in the Christian protocols of Christian ritual, well, it depends on which Christians we talk about, because the thing is that what you're seeing here is an adult experience, not an infant's experience. I don't think an infant may be psychologically changed all that much, even if the infant is dipped into a basin of water all the way, or whether it's just a little water poured on the forehead or whatever. But I'd say when it happens to somebody who has cognitively developed into at least pre-adulthood, ritual can be life-changing for the psychic profile of the person who's undergoing the ritual. So I would say baby rituals here are maybe not as productive to think about as child rituals, pre-adult rituals, adult rituals in all phases of later life. But then who am I to say what kind of psychic scars a baby might have experienced by being dipped all the way into a basin of water? I don't know.
There's another comment. Poster agrees that this is a very transforming event for him, and the way he explains the initiation, it's very scary, sometimes deadly.
Yes.
And there's a question why people are going through this initiation.
Oh, yes. I think now you're talking. Yes. Why am I so cavalier today? It's because there's something playful about the way Greek speakers in phases of their civilization, when something is becoming evanescent, are so self-consciously referring to every aspect of an experience like initiation that they can think of, whereas maybe in earlier phases when these transformative experiences happen, it's taken for granted, yes, you're going to go through a big event because you're getting married, or you're fighting in a war for the first time, or even childbirth can be considered a ritualized aspect of a woman's life cycle. So if all experience is somehow viewed within a ritualized framework of a cosmos that operates on sacred narrative that deals both with things going wrong and things going right, it's a pretty intense situation, isn't it? And again, I say that the more a system of thinking, for example, is evanescent, the more likely it is that participants in the system will keep pointing at it. And it's not that I'm cavalier, but I'm almost feeling compassionate about the crisis that people go through when they when they're living in a system that is on the verge of abrupt confrontation and possibly disappearance, loss. So maybe I'm smiling at the human condition, of which I'm very much a part.
One of the participants is intrigued by the fact that Pausanius doesn't tell us right away that it's his own experience. He only lets us know at the end. And they're wondering, is it that he's letting us experience the whole thing detached from him as a person? And then he just tells us at the end, oh, well, it's not hearsay. It's the genuine article. I myself experienced it. Or whether, how much would we experience it differently if we'd known from the beginning? What do you think his reasoning was for putting the information last?
That is just a brilliant comment. And it has to do with what one student of ancient Greek civilization has described as a situation. This is in Pausanius's time, when there were only 3 supposedly super prestigious hero cult sites left in the Greek-speaking world. And the site of Trophonius was one of the 3. Now, maybe that's too pessimistic about how things had shrunk, how the influence of hero cults had already shrunk. But if it is true that maybe in Pausanius's time, there were only 3 big centers where you could experience what it was like to be initiated into hero cult, which certainly in earlier eras would be local, but now is clearly not local. A crude analogy would be Disney World, where you go to those few selected places where you can have intense experiences, maybe more for your immature side than your mature side, but you pay a lot of money to go to places like that, and sort of cheaper versions don't really have much prestige, don't they? Do they? I wish I hadn't said that. I think of that Disney World feature where, what is it called, since we're near Halloween, called the Ghost House or something? I forget. I've been in it with my children, and before Holly and I were married, we went there already. And it's almost like the Eleusinian Mysteries, where people are herded into this dark room, and then given revelations, rather kitsch revelations in this case. But Christian fathers will make fun of the mysteries, certainly, and I think of some of the earlier ones who really knew something about initiations, like Clement of Alexandria. And he says, what's this big deal? Thousands of people herded into a giant hall of initiation and being shown an ear of wheat. Big deal. Well, it was a big deal once.
Well, thanks again for this conversation. And thanks to all of you out there for joining us, and happy Halloween. In the meantime, since it has come up, soon we'll be talking about much more obvious kinds of ghosts in our course through
we will.
literature.
And I think this helps explain to myself why I'm feeling so, how did I describe it? Cavalier, I could have said glib, about very important life and death matters. But Halloween, the way these matters are handled in a playful way, in a not very playful society, I think, maybe excuses me for my general démarche today. And please forgive me for seeming to be cavalier when I'm really not. I assure you.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.